I stop and the bell rings. If you are exiting, do so backing down as you would a ladder. This is also the center of St. George Street. You can walk from the city gates over to the cathedral and enjoy the shops and restaurants on St. George Street. Please wait until I stop and the bell rings. Also here on the corner on St. George Street is the Medieval Torture Museum. They have about 28 exhibits of different torture devices that they used during the medieval periods and during the early 16 to 1800s. Now you download an app on your phone and it tells you about each of the exhibits as you go to it. There's about 30 to 40 medieval torture devices inside of there. It's a good tour to take if you're into that. So we have no more on and no more off. This trolley is in motion.
Who wouldn't be into that? Torture's fun.
Please remain seated at all times, keeping all items and body parts inside. No smoking, vaping, or consumption of alcohol, and please hold conversations to a minimum so everyone can enjoy the tour. Now my name is George, and you are on the Good Golly trolley. Golly. So as we continue, I'm going to talk to you about the Menorcans. So Mr. Andrew Turnbull, he brought people from the island of Minorca. Excuse me. He also brought Italian and Greek servants over to work on his indigo plantation. Well, that was a failed project from the start. They did not have adequate housing. They also didn't have enough food or medical supplies, and so most of them died. Well, Father Pedro Camps, he gathered the survivors, and he marched them north to St. Augustine. And he made a treaty with the British who were here at the time that they could settle here. So when the British left after the war and before the Spanish returned, the Menorcans were the settlers that were here. They are the reason that St. Augustine is the oldest continuously occupied settlement since 1565. Now we're going to step into the Gilded Age a little bit. We're going to talk a little bit more about Mr. Henry Flagler. Now when Mr. Henry Flagler came to St. Augustine, he built 2 hotels at that time. Now over here to your right is the Grace United Methodist Church. Now when he was in the process of building his first hotel, he wanted to build a second one. And he wanted to build right across from the first hotel. But there was a small wooden church, was the Olivet Methodist Church. So he met with that congregation and told them if they would sell him the property, he would build them a new church. So that Grace United Methodist Church, that was the product of the agreement with Henry Flagler. Well, Henry Flagler built his first hotel was the Ponce de Leon. It is now the Flagler College here to your right. Now it was opened for service in 1888. Now this rotunda here on your right, that was a ballroom for the hotel, and it's a dining hall for the college. Now those stained glass windows are Tiffany windows. Those are some of the first designed by Louis Comfort Tiffany. Now there are about 70 of those windows in the hotel, in the college. Now they are insured for about $130 million. I bet they don't have food fights in that dining hall. Now like I say, this was opened in January of 1888. And it was a seasonal hotel. Now it was open for about 3 months during the winter season. Now you could stay part of the season or you could stay the whole time. But if you stayed here, you paid that seasonal price. Now that was about $9,000 at that time. Now that would equate to close to $250,000 in today's terms. Now it closed in 1967, and there were 6 presidents that stayed here. Now the last one was Lyndon B. Johnson. Now coming up in front of us is the Alcazar, or it's the Lightner Museum, but that was Henry Flagler's second hotel, was the Alcazar. Now right up here to your left is the Villa Zareta Museum. That is stop number 9. But like most places, it was once somebody's home. You know, pretty much everything in St. Augustine was lived in at one time or another. Now Mr. Franklin Smith, he built this structure as his winter retreat. And he built it to resemble the Alhambra Castle, which is in Spain. You can see the architecture there. Now the lines on the building there, that's the first example of poured concrete in St. Augustine. They would build wooden forms and pour them full of concrete. When the concrete dried, they would move the forms up and repeat the process. And they would go up layer by layer. Now this is the Villa Zareta Museum. Now they have a lot of interesting artifacts. One of the most notable artifacts is a 2,400-year-old Egyptian rug. Now that rug is made entirely out of cat hair. I cannot stop, but I cannot ring the bell, but please wait until I stop and you will get a verbal cue. Ding, ding. Now the Villa Zareta has an audio tour, and it's available in English, Spanish, and in French. And you can see a lot of the artifacts, and you can also see that cat hair rug. And I always say, if you happen to know someone who owns cats, they probably have a cat hair rug as well. So we have no more on and no more off. This trolley is in motion. Ding, ding. So right here on your left, coming up in front of the college, that is the second of the 2 statues of Henry Flagler that you can see throughout the city. Now here on your right, like I said, this is the Lightner Museum, but it was Henry Flagler's second hotel, was the Alcazar. Now it was opened in December of 1888. Now it went bankrupt in 1935 due to the Great Depression. Well, Mr. Otto Lightner, he was a collector, and he needed somewhere to store his collections. So he bought this property, and in 1948 he opened the Lightner Museum. This is stop number 10, so please wait until I stop as the bell rings. Exit to your right, to your left, backing down as you would a ladder. Excuse me, sir. So this is stop number 10. Wait until I stop and the bell rings. Exit to your right, to your left, backing down as you would a ladder.
Welcome aboard.
Y'all enjoy. Hey, thank you. I appreciate it. It's a city ordinance. I think it's because of the Airbnb that's right behind the museum, but I know it's a city ordinance. Yep, y'all enjoy, thank you. Okay, so we do have no more on and no more off. This trolley is in motion. Please remain seated at all times, keeping all items and body parts inside, as I cannot stop to retrieve them. So as we continue our tour here, so when Mr. Henry Flagler built the Alcazar, he put a lot of nightlife into the hotel. There was a bowling alley, they had billiard tables, they had an indoor archery range and a movie theater. But the most notable and the first of its kind, coming up here on your left, this rotunda sticking out right here, now that was the deep end of the indoor Olympic-sized swimming pool. Now they had a retractable roof at that time, and you could swim under the stars. They also had a 2-story ballroom, and they would bring orchestras in and you could swim and listen to the music. Now the shallow end is now a restaurant. It is called the Cafe Alcazar. So we are entering Lincolnville. Now Lincolnville was the first black community that was settled in St. Augustine. In the 1860s you had emancipated or freed slaves that came to this area, and they settled this area here. Now in the 1860s they wasn't sure that they were going to remain free. So they called this Little Africa, this area. But I think it was about 1893 they had the Emancipation Proclamation, and the Freedom Act was signed into law. So they named this Lincolnville after Abraham Lincoln. Now in the 1900s you had ladies' dress shops and meat markets down Washington Street here to the left. They even had a couple of nightclubs there. They had their own community here inside of the city. Now right here on your left is the Civil Rights Museum. Now that was the home of Dr. Robert Hayling. He was a major civil rights, one of the major civil rights leaders at that time. Now right here on your left is the home of Miss Cora Tyson. Now Miss Cora, she's most famous for housing Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. during some of his many stays here. Now they say you can still see her out and about as she still lives in that house. And she was 102 in June. I guess everybody's in a hurry today. So right here so this is one of the largest areas of the Victorian style houses. They have the largest collection of the Victorian era houses here in this area as well. You see quite a few of them through here. Now this is Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Avenue, and there is one of those in every city of the country, but this one is famous. It's one of two that he actually marched down in protest. Now I'm going to play you a clip of one of the speeches he gave while he was in the city.
I had a chance to talk with many people, some of whom are considered some of the very outstanding leaders and people of our nation. I believe that I was uttering the truth when I said to them that the Negroes of St. Augustine, Florida, and those that have come in from other communities and their allies in the white community are determined to march the streets of this city until the walls of segregation come crumbling down.
So right here on your left is the St. Paul's AME Church. Now that's where he preached a sermon and he gave that speech.
To ensure that
Coming up here on your left is the corner market. But you notice the sign here, this was the Lincolnville Public Library. Now we're coming up to stop number 11 is the Lincolnville Museum. Now they have a lot of interesting artifacts in here as well. One of the most notable artifacts is a piano that Ray Charles would play when he would come into the city. Ray Charles would often come into the city and he would play the piano at one of the nightclubs down Washington Street there. Please wait until I stop and the bell rings. Exit backing down as you would a ladder, using the uprights and the handles. Okay, we do have no more on and no more off. This trolley is in motion.
Are you still here? Are you still watching? Look at my pretty face. Listening to my pretty voice.
Now as we exit right here, you will notice that the museum is inside of the Excelsior High School. Now that Excelsior School was the first black public school that was opened in St. Johns County. And that was in 1935. It was also the first segregated high school in St. Johns County. Now they also have a fingerprint card in here. They have the original fingerprint card from the St. Johns County jail when Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was arrested during one of his stays here. He spent a night in the county jail. And this is the St. Cyprian's Episcopal Church. Now this is one of 9 Episcopal churches that you can see through the city. This is a quiet area, so I'll be back with you shortly. So not only was St. Augustine, but especially Lincolnville, they were a major part of the civil rights movement, especially during the 1960s. They also had a lot of industry in this area. Now you can see over here to your left, you can see the waterfront there. So the ships could bring materials and supplies in and out of the area fairly easily. They would have lumber yards and sawmills here. They also had a couple of warehouses where they would bring the supplies for Flagler's hotels into this area. Also, they had one of 2 blood red orange plantations that St. Augustine is famous for. The shrimping and fishing industry was a big part of this area. They would rent the shrimp boats from the Greek captains, and they would employ all of the crew from Lincolnville, and that kept it as a thriving community. And coming up here on your left, just the other side of this supply house, is a white building. Now that is the fish market. Right here to your left is the fish market. Now this St. Augustine Fish Camp, that's a good restaurant. It is inside of the fish market there. They do have parking. Also, the power plant was a big part of this area. Now, one of the byproducts of the power plant was distilled water. They would use that water to make ice and use that to keep their shrimp and fish fresh. This building here to your left was the ice house. It is now the distillery. We have an ice plant cafe upstairs. That's another good restaurant. It is a farm-to-table restaurant. All of their menu items are served fresh, and they change as far as what's in season. Now, coming up in front of us here is our 1940s model ice plant truck. Now, they didn't always have refrigerators. They would deliver blocks of ice to people's houses in a truck like this. And they would put that in an ice box and use that to keep their food cold. This is now the distillery. So you can enjoy whiskey, vodka, and gin that they make in-house. They also have rum and bourbon here as well. Please wait until I stop and the bell rings.
Good time.
If you are exiting, do so to your left, backing down as you would a ladder.
Sounds like a real good time.
2, 3, 4.
But I think I'll stay sober this afternoon.
St. Augustine. No, sir, but it was a good guess. All right, we're going back further. What is the oldest profession in the world?
That sounds like a good time too.
No, that's a good guess. No.
Oh, go ahead. I'm sitting like Quinn. I'm sitting. One day, switch places.
This is George at stop 12. I have 2 rows available. Is everybody enjoying themselves so far today?
Yeah.
All right, all right. Do we have any first timers to St. Augustine? Oh, there's quite a few of us. I always say I hope I can tell you something you didn't already know, or entertain you a little bit. I would go for both, but I don't want to push it. We have no more on and no more off. This trolley is in motion. Please remain seated at all times, keeping all items and body parts inside, as I cannot stop to retrieve them. And please remain seated until I get to the next stop and the bell rings. So coming up in front of us, this yellow brick building to our left, there are 27 stars on the side of that building. Now that indicates Florida becoming the 27th state of the Union. Now that was in 1845. That was also the home of the Soyo Carcaba cigar factory. Now they were the first to employ mostly females. They said the females' hands were smaller so they could wrap the cigars faster and tighter. But they had a contract for 8 million cigars in 5 years, and that was virtually impossible. So they did go bankrupt. Now I mentioned about Ray Charles coming into the city and playing the piano. So by the age of 5, Ray Charles started losing his sight due to early onset glaucoma. And by the age of 7, he was completely blind. So his mother enrolled him in the Florida School for the Deaf and the Blind here in St. Augustine. And he was a member of that school from the age of 7 until 14. And that nightclub down Washington Street back in Lincolnville, it was called the Oddfellows House. And he would often come to the City, and he would play the piano at the Oddfellows house. Also, that blood red orange plantation I mentioned, it is called Yalaha. Like I said, it was one of 2 plantations, but between 1927 and 1935, they had a series of 3 major freezes. So it killed those trees, and they no longer exist. Also, in the Civil Rights Museum, there's a sandwich counter there at the museum. It's the sandwich counter from the Woolworths in St. Augustine. The young protesters, they staged a sit-in at the sandwich counter in the Woolworths during the 1960s Civil Rights Movement. And they were arrested. And you can see that countertop inside of the museum. Now right here on your left is the Whetstone Chocolate Factory. Now you can walk back from stop 13, which is the winery, and you can enjoy chocolate that they make in-house here. Now this building right up here to your left in front of us, now that was a warehouse for Flagler's Railroad. In 1997, they opened the San Sebastian Winery. Now they make 17 wines in-house. Now most of their wines are made with the Scuppernong grape. That is a sweeter grape, so you get a sweeter wine. It's also a local grape. Now they have an upstairs cafe, and you can eat there. It's called the La Cochina. They also have a gift shop, and I've been told that you can buy a wine glass that you can wear around your neck. Talk about convenience. This is stop 13. Please wait until I stop and the bell rings. Exit to your right, backing down as you would a ladder. But please wait until I stop and the bell rings. And exit to your right, backing down as you would a ladder. And y'all enjoy your day.